What was Luke's reaction to seeing his father Anakin kill Jedi younglings during Order 66 when he watched it himself? Greetings Acolytes and welcome back. Of everything that occurred during Order 66, Operation Nightfall was the most atrocious. The sacking of the Jedi Temple, with the newly dubbed Darth Vader at the helm, the 501st Legion marched up the stairs of Anakin's old home and maliciously slaughtered every single Jedi inside. They left none alive, not even children. Gorging himself on his newfound powers, Anakin would battle through the ranks of the Jedi left behind during the wartime, easily cutting them down in a few swings of his lightsaber. Among the Jedi that Anakin would personally kill, many Padawans and younglings would die by his hand. So what happened when Luke would watch a holotape of the entire event unfolding many years later as Grand Master? Luke's knowledge of his father's life as Darth Vader only went so far, and Anakin had died before the two of them could properly have a full resolution. In that wake, there were still many secrets that were continuing to be uncovered about the Sith Lord and his life. So let's jump right into the holocron and talk about what Luke thought of his father's darkest hour. Our story today comes from the Legends Dark Nest novel trilogy. It should be noted that Luke at this point did have prior knowledge of Order 66 and the Jedi Purge. At this point in his life, Luke has heard first-hand tales of Order 66 from survivors, holorecords, and various journals. But of course, not many records survived, as almost everything was scrubbed once the Empire took over. The Empire wanted the galaxy to forget about the Jedi entirely. So once the initial phases of the Purge were concluded, the only ones who really knew about it were the Inquisitors, Vader, and some miscellaneous assassins. The Empire had its intended effect, and most places and people let the Jedi fade into memory. However, there were even fewer records of what happened inside the temple itself. The cover story was the 501st had been sent to lock down the Jedi Temple and arrest the Jedi until the entire situation was resolved, and that it was the Jedi that led an uprising and attacked the clones. The clones acted out of self-defense in the public, and the Jedi were all killed. All footage the Empire could find was destroyed, and any witnesses to the truth were silenced. Because of this, information on Operation Nightfall was extremely scarce and very rare. While Luke always had his suspicions, he never knew exactly the details of what occurred that night, until the moment he was privy to the last surviving security footage from the Jedi Temple. To make a long story short, Luke, Han, R2-D2, and 3PO were all locked away in a Killik prison. This was during the Dark Nest crisis, where the Killiks had returned to the galaxy under new leadership to enact a sinister plan. During this, it was R2-D2 who was able to steal some holorecords, and while the team was in prison, R2 decided that this was the right time to show Luke the truth. First, he mentioned something about his master not talking to him during the Jedi Purge, and the last he was told was that they were going to Mustafar. But before that, Anakin had vanished for a while, and R2 did not know where he was until now. It is then when the droid activated the footage of Anakin Skywalker in front of both Luke and Han. The footage was a static camera angle of one of the old Jedi Temple rooms, which Luke immediately identified as the Room of the 12 Fountains. Soon, they heard blaster fire, and several younglings no more than 4 to 6 years old came scurrying into the room with training lightsabers activated. They hid in the room and were followed by a couple of very young Padawans, a group of teenagers, and a large Jedi Master. A storm of blaster fire followed them all into the room, striking down and killing a few of the Padawans who had tried and failed to deflect it. A few of the clone troopers then came into view, and Han recognized them immediately, having been very young during the Separatist uprising. Luke very quietly continued to watch as he finally understood what he was seeing. The Padawans and teens, under the anchor and leadership of the large Jedi, began to set up a wall of defense against the incoming blaster fire, even driving some of the clones out. That was until another blue lightsaber entered the frame and slit the guards of the Padawans so seamlessly that it was effortless, cutting 2 of them down. A cloaked figure holding the lightsaber faced off with the Jedi Master, before again cutting him down across the chest in another perfectly executed ferocious blow. The cloaked Darth Vader stood and watched as the clones entered the room and began mowing down the rest of the children. It was then the figure turned around towards the security camera to reveal the face of Anakin Skywalker. Without emotion, Luke simply asked R2 to shut off the recording. turning to his friends and stating that he needed to center himself. Han, too, had been greatly disturbed by the video, stating that it was rough for even him. He then decided to go check on Luke to make sure he was okay, only to find the Jedi Grandmaster floating in the center of the chamber in a cross-legged meditation position, and everything in the room was floating with him. The footage of watching his father personally kill the children of the Jedi had put Luke in such a place that he could barely contain his own power. Emotions boiled under the surface, and it was all he could do just to find a place where he could exercise his training. In the moment, Luke was flowing into the light side of the Force, but that didn't stop the release of his feelings and affecting himself. Every object. Han didn't say anything, but Luke sensed his presence and simply said that he was fine, that he needed to center himself, repeating this again. Unfortunately, that's when C-3PO butted into the room and began listing off facts on their situation in the Killik prison. With Luke's concentration broken, he decided to move on from the subject and focus his mind on the current predicament. Much later though, Luke would reveal his feelings about the entire event. Of course, Luke was greatly troubled and disturbed by the actions of his father, but in Luke's eyes, Anakin was enslaved by the dark side and was not in control at the time. Luke, unlike many others, understood the dichotomy of Anakin and Vader. He knew they were essentially two different people within one very complicated man. The actions of Vader, while born from Anakin's feelings, were not the actions of Anakin. In the moment that Anakin gave into the dark side, out of fear and losing those that he loved, Vader took a hold and tied Anakin within himself, imprisoning his father. Kenobi knew this as well, but he had believed that Vader had destroyed Anakin and that there was no hope for him. These feelings were born out of Obi-Wan not being able to handle the fact that his best friend and brother had done these terrible, wicked things. But Luke realizes what Yoda too did, that Anakin Skywalker was gone, and Luke was able to separate Anakin and Vader. To them, Anakin was dead, and Vader was the being that wore his skin. To Obi-Wan, burning Vader was a way of ridding the Sith Lord of being able to use the face of the once great hero. Luke reveals that he's aware of everything that Obi-Wan feels, but that he views things differently. He believes his father was in chains and unable to break free. Luke forgave Vader and sought his redemption because he could separate the darkness from the man. And so, even though he was horribly disturbed by what he saw, his feelings were sadness and pity, but pity also for Anakin. As Yoda once said, hate not the person but the act. Pity the one who has lost the battle with the dark side. Yoda's words echo a sentiment of compassion and forgiveness, even though Yoda would not always walk this path perfectly. Luke found, though, in his heart that he understood the cruel, deceptive, and corruptive nature of the dark side. Its influence is what he took measure of when analyzing the horrendous actions of the individual. Luke could never give in to the dark side because he doesn't see it as an easy way for power. In fact, he doesn't even see it as power at all. Rather, Luke sees it for the lie that it is. When concerning giving into the dark side, Luke said this: "No Sith has ever truly cared for another being. I understand that the lure of the individual power is seductive, but to follow the Sith is to give up on others. It's the death of hope. I sometimes wonder how they attract any followers at all. It is this hope that the Grand Master Luke Skywalker shares that keeps him so rooted in the light side of the Force, and essentially makes him the perfect Jedi. He understands the evil that the dark side is, and he cannot blame his father for the actions of Darth Vader. He knew that his father truly did care for others, and the path of destruction he went down was because of an overabundance of that care and love. Darth Vader could never be his father because Anakin Skywalker knew love. This is why he didn't blame Anakin for Order 66 or Nightfall. So my friends, what do you think of this? Have you ever wondered what Luke thought of his father murdering the younglings on that fateful night? And how he was able to rationalize it in his own mind? Thank you so much, my friends, for visiting the channel today. May the Force be with you, and I hope you're having an amazing one.